And I want you to see the book that we're going to be talking about. I'll show you the cover here before we get started. It's called The Progressive City History of Downtown Sulphur Springs. The Progressive City History of Downtown Sulphur Springs, 1914. And you might think that we couldn't have been all that progressive in 1914, but you're going to get a surprise. And with us are members of the Genealogical Society, proud members of Hopkins County Research Team. And it is John Sellers. Good morning, John.
Good morning.
And Shirley Patchen.
Good morning.
Thank you both for all the work you've done on this book.
Thank you.
To help us know what our roots are. And where do we begin?
Well, it's kind of hard, but I'll kick it off by telling kind of the brief history of the book and how it came about. We have a 1914 city directory. To our knowledge, is the earliest, and I think through research, it is going to be the first city directory that was ever done in Sulphur Springs. City directories were very popular in the late 1800s and early 1900s and lasted up to about the 1990s. But of course, us being a smaller, more rural place, we didn't have one until this group, it's called the Worley Group, came to Sulphur Springs, and it even mentions in the papers from that era that they were here canvassing the city. And so this was something that we had a typed version of this, didn't have an original at the time, that Linda Moore Riddle typed probably 40 years ago. And it was part of our collection. And so we decided that this would be a great jumping off place to talk about downtown and all the businesses that existed in 1914. And 1914 is a really pivotal year in our modern history. Of course, worldwide and countrywide, of course, we're entering World War I. The United States obviously is not going to get in for about 3 years, but the world stage is on our conscience. Also, a lot of y'all probably have been in the banks downtown and other places and seen this wonderful panoramic picture that was taken of the square. That was 1914 also.
And this is on display at the City National Bank.
The City National Bank has one, Alliance Bank has one, several businesses have one. And then also, this is the year right before we paved the square and all the streets that lead from, but they're passing the bonds. This is also the year that the federal building, which is now our city hall, was completed in 1914. And the citizens had also had a canvass to number the streets, because you had to number your streets so you could get free delivery, postal delivery.
Okay.
Before, you always had to go to the mailbox, or you paid for the mailman to come. So this was another innovative thing that was going on in 1914. But anyway, that's kind of the story of how all this got started.
And this book that you're holding, though, is this historical?
Yes. Since that time, as things happen, there have been some of these original books that have been in family collections, and they have been turned over now. I believe we have 2 copies at the Genealogical Society of the original book. And I'm sure there may be a few more of them out there.
I just have to say, City National Bank is prominent
really
there.
Yes, we're on the front page, and that made me really happy. Our capital was only 275,000 then, but that was a pretty big bank. Of course, now our assets are over 700 million, so that's quite a comparison.
And still right downtown, the cornerstone of our
very same place.
And Shirley, when and how did your interest enter in this?
To be honest, when we moved down to the new library and opened up, the volunteers pretty much lived at the library. We inventoried every piece that came in, and we found things we never knew we had. And I was in charge of taking over the business cabinets and some file, what do you call them, vertical files.
Yes.
And I really got into the business section, and about that time, a lot of people started coming in wanting to know whose building were they in on the downtown square.
Let me ask you, when did we move to the new library, which is inside the library? What year?
It's been 5 years
It's been 5 years now.
Okay.
Time passes, but I believe that's about right, 5 years.
Yes, 5 years. And this project took 4 years to put together, and then this last year, it's gone through many proofreadings and rereadings and rewritings, and so it's a 5-year project, to be honest with you. And I never dreamed that it would be this big. Had no idea it would be this big. But it's an amazing book. There's so many wonderful stories and facts in the book.
How many pages would you say?
It's 400. I was looking for you.
Okay.
With the index, it's 453 pages, and there is every full name index in it. And there are also pictures. How many did you say?
There are 243 pictures that we were able to find.
And a lot of them are of the businesses and the individuals that were business owners in 1914. And they're all indexed and they're sourced. Of course, us being the Genealogical Society, what I'm really happy about this book, this is probably the best documented book that's been published. There's been a lot of good histories done in Sulphur Springs by a lot of our wonderful earlier historians, but I guess it wasn't as in vogue to document your work within the actual book. But this book is documented. You're going to know where the picture came from. You're going to know where the article, because we didn't just use, luckily, we don't have a lot of our early newspapers. But luckily, the Gazette, which was published for years and years, there's 8 years of it that we now possess in the library, and 1914 is one of them. So that really helped Shirley do her research in finding these people, stories about them, and et cetera, is that we had the basics of the newspaper to help document all this.
Okay.
All of this is information that was found in articles or in family files. They were found in Celia Wright's collection, Simon June Tuck's collection, Sidney Bryce, all of our early historians who had written up things. So we were able to, like John said, find many sources, and they're all documented. You're going to find murder mystery. You're going to find a secretary who shoots her boss. You're going to find a judge who died on the witness stand. You're going to find a beloved doctor who got ran over by a train. You're going to find a mystery of a gentleman who left a 2-story building and fell down the stairs, but nobody heard him falling down the stairs. But someone found him dead at the bottom of the stairs.
Newspaper editor.
Oh, there's just so many wonderful stories.
Well, continue to tell us about the book, and we have about 8 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Well, let me tell you this.
I know you can't condense it.
Let me tell you this first. We've already sold out of our first run.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Yes, and we are now starting a list at the Genealogical Library. And if you would like to get your name on the waiting list, just call the library, 885-83...
8523.
8523. And
or come by the library. The good thing, though, in modern publishing, so that you won't think you've got a lot of time, is we've already started a waiting list. We only published 50 because, of course, being a smaller organization, not knowing how popular the book, which it's very popular, we sold out in about 2 weeks. We decided to publish just 30 more right now to see how that goes, but we're going to turn it in for publishing on Friday. We'll probably have them by the following Friday or Monday. So we're talking about less than 2 weeks for you to wait for this. And we've already started the second waiting list. So if you're interested in this book, you really need to get on the list. They're $50. All the proceeds, of course, goes back to the Genealogical Society.
Yes.
Let's talk more about the book.
And show us the cover while she's talking.
Yes.
And that's...
did you know that we had over 26 grocery stores at that time? We had 92 people in the building industry because our community was growing at such a fast speed. There were 6 hardware stores, but there was also a couple of automobile stores.
Okay.
We had a lot of manufacturing going on. We had 3 movies theaters. Yes, and there were 2 men's stores. There was at least 6 dry goods stores, 5 drug stores. They're all small mom and pop type, but we did have a couple of produce house. Mr. Wester had a chicken produce house, and there was Mr. Camp. I love Mr. Camp. He even started the first union, the Fruit Growers Union.
Oh, really?
Yes, and there's a little story about him in there. So you're just going to discover so many of your wonderful people from long ago, and I really think these ancestors wanted to be remembered. as I was telling John, I would hear phone calls and I would hear names from the book, and I would run over and say, were they part of the Wester, ice cream parlor? And that's how we got so many pictures. He was a direct descendant. He came all the way from North Dallas and brought us 2 amazing pictures. All of the pictures turned out so much better than what we ever expected. And you're just going to be amazed at the wonderful pictures. We also have ads that go with the businesses when we were able to find them. It was a joy to work on this, and I hope you'll enjoy it as much as I do.
I also wanted to show you that with each book there is a map that comes with the book, and the map was done by the 2 engineers of the city of Sulphur Springs, by Dave and Mike. And what they did is they used the early Sanborn maps and some other maps to recreate downtown and number the buildings.
Okay.
So as you go through the book is done street by street of the streets that had to do with businesses. And so you can refer to the map to see what building was in that particular location in 1914.
Now, Bill Tuck is the one that brought in the 1915 map.
Yeah.
And I think they used it as well.
Yes, the Sanborn. And it shows that we had 3 banks on the square at that time. But the only one that's still there is City National Bank, as far as obviously the building's not the same. But there was a bank where Alliance is. It was First National. There were 4 banks. 4. The building that's across from the courthouse that has columns was the Guarantee State Bank. What a lot of people know is the Chuck Wagon later on. But the reason why the columns are there is because it was reworked and redesigned in about this same era to be a bank.
Okay.
And then where the Secret Garden was, over in that area, which of course is the southwest corner of Main and the square, is where the First State Bank was. So we actually had 4 banks in that era, but they were all on the square. That of course, this is the era that all small towns, everything that had to do with anything business-wise was around the square. Obviously, it was 40 years before the interstate, and things were really different then. But it's a great. It's full. It's not just full of businesses and facts. It's not just a listing by any means. As Shirley said, she found articles that fleshed these people out. She would go ahead and do their obituary if they were a prominent business person at that time, even though they lived 50 to 60 years. She would put the obit in there because a lot of times the obit would refer to the kind of business they'd had or what their role was in Sulphur Springs. So,
and you get to know the person more by reading their obit. Yeah. So much more is in the obit.
I know that this will be a definite aid to others who are starting a genealogical research of their family. And it's at a time when we were transitioning as Americans.
Yes.
We had horses and wagons and we had automobiles.
That's right, just starting. And a big transition. Airplanes were around. We didn't have an airport, but there had been a couple of exhibitions by this time, and they will follow. There was a great balloon ascension on the square, according to Sidney Price, and actually Bill Bradford, that's one of his Todays in History that he talks about in World War I.
What I want to know is, what happened to that lady? Is that another story?
I know what you're talking. I have no idea what happened to the lady.
She went up, and then the story...
They never found... I don't know that story. I wish I would have asked Sidney.
I would tell you that any given weekend, I found out there would be over 1,000 people downtown. They would travel by a 50-mile radius by wagons and horses, and we had 3 yards.
Wagon yards.
And they would camp out there, it would be like a festival. And
just like today.
I know. Every weekend it was something going on downtown.
It's funny how we've gone full circle on some of this. I mean, but wonderful. There's a lot of pictures of the individuals. Here's a wonderful old picture of City National Bank.
Oh my!
Of course,
how glorious! I saw one, a Kelty blacksmith shop.
Oh yes, that's Tim Kelty's grandfather, T.J. Kelty. And matter of fact, that blacksmith shop lasted longer. I don't remember it, but it's not that far out of my memory because it was late up into the 50s.
John Sellers, you're a wealth of information. Shirley Patchen, you too. And your memory is holding all this just like his does. And so when people call, you can attach. And that's the beauty of our genealogical society. Hold the book up one more time. And thank you so much for bringing this in. We will talk more. I wish we had an hour.
Let me just say that we had plenty of volunteers who helped put this together.
Yes, we sure did. And a lot of researcher and a lot of proofreading.
A lot of proofreading.
If you want one of these, call quickly to the Genealogical Society.
Yes, quickly.
And it is $50.
Yes.
And call today if you can. Wish we had an hour to talk.
Yes.
We're just about done now of time. Thank you both for coming in today. The Progressive City, History of Downtown Sulphur Springs, 1914.
Thank you, Enola.
Thank
you too.